Well, hello, hello. As we're starting to join in, it's so good to see so many familiar faces. Hello again, Colin and Liz and Rachel and Vanessa, all back. Jeremy, welcome. Julie and Marnie, this is great. We're filling up the screen. We'll jump to a second page before you know it. That's fabulous. We're just taking a minute for people to be admitted as we join in. Hi, Scott.
Michael, it says it won't turn the video on.
All right, I'll give it exactly one more minute and then I'll a couple of introductory comments.
I like your art. Pretty art behind you.
Thank you. Well, welcome, Kathy and Karen Wilson Starks. It's great to have you join us. This is delightful. So to everybody, Happy New Year. I guess you can do that till about the 20th of January, and then it's no longer new. This is our 11th, at least for me, this is the 11th town hall I've been able to host and organize each time, just featuring another person from our professional association who does interesting and exciting work and captures the great variety of the things that we do. Even joining us, Colin Cooper was one of our presenters this summer as well. So I'm glad that you're all here. And even before we get started, for anybody who's on the West Coast or who has friends, particularly in the LA area, you know, our thoughts are with all of you and with all of the people down there as they need the resilience and strength and support to do that. That's great. Hi, Sandy Shulman. Wonderful to have you join us too. So just a quick reminder, it's only 3 weeks away or so, 4 weeks away. We'll be at our annual conference in Charleston, South Carolina. I'm hoping to see many of you in person there and excited for that. But without waiting for a conference to share great thoughts today, we have a very special friend and guest joining us, Karol Wasylyshyn. For those of you who've been active members of our society or read our journal, Karol's a well-known name because she has really created the blue ocean strategy of defining this notion of a trusted leadership advisor. And we're going to spend time talking about that today. And just so you know, because many of us have these diverse paths that bring us to the work we do, Karol's consulting career has evolved through the disciplines of journalism and then clinical psychology and then executive development. And she's worked with hundreds of senior business leaders in every global sector and a broad array of industries. She is a fellow of APA. She's a fellow of consulting psychology. She's received our RHR Award for excellence in consultation. She's published extensively. In fact, her articles in CPJ on Trusted Leadership Advisor were recently organized into a special collection for those things. There are only 2 such special collections I'm aware of. It's quite an honor to be with you, Karol, for that.
Thank
and so, like today, I'm going to turn it over to Karol. She's going to share some slides. I'll advance them for her. We'll have about 25 to 30 minutes as she sets the tone and the ground for us. And then with this number of people, we'll no doubt move into some breakout groups where those of you on the call can share some of your own experience with each other or your questions and kind of discover what this concept means in your own work. And then the last 10 minutes of the hour, we'll reconvene and just kind of share some of the things from our conversations that we'd like others to hear as well. So with that, let me turn it over to you, Karol. And
thank you, Mark.
When you want, I'm going to put my slides on as well.
Okay. I can't see everyone though, can I?
Yeah. You will be, when the slides are on, you will probably have a thin strip of 4 or 5 faces, and you can scroll up and down to see those. And we'll probably have enough people where we'll be on 2 pages as well.
Okay, you can start the slides. Slide 1 would be fine. So, and I'll just make an introductory comment. First of all, there are some familiar folks here tonight, and hello to you. And you've heard me speak on this topic. What I want to do in this town hall is reflect on, not all of them, Mark, just the first one, please.
This is the first slide. There we go.
Yeah, that one. Okay. So I want to reflect on 35 years of work is what it amounts to. And I did a symposium last year, and Jeremy Robinson was there. I don't know that anyone else who's with us tonight was there. So Jeremy, this is a slimmed down version of what you heard in that symposium. But all these many years, I've been working with C-level leaders. And what I want to share with all of you tonight is how that work got started, why this work is being encouraged by these business leaders themselves, maybe share some specific tools that I've used over the years to propel this work, and then, of course, respond to any questions that you might have. So we can go to the next slide, Mark. And it should say the conceptual seed. And if you'll just click on it, there it is. So in 1988, this incredible man, Mark Feck, who passed about 5 years ago, he was the CHRO at Roman Haas Global Chemical Company. And he knew that I had a business background. He knew that I was a psychologist. And he said, we want to do a different kind of executive development thing here. And these were his words about looking at the whole person and a very, very explicit focus on leadership behavior. So that was the conceptual seed. I worked there for 20 years. There's 70 top business leaders. When Dow bought this company in 2008, 20 of the 70 went on to become CEOs in other companies. And Raj Gupta, who was the CEO at the time, has said it was because of our focus on leadership behavior. Next slide, if you would, Mark. I'm putting this slide up because Howard Peen, who also passed a few years ago, was at GlaxoSmithKline. And I worked with Howard for probably 7 or 8 years. And you will see in reading this slide that he already recognized how this field called executive coaching, was becoming commoditized. But he recognized that this longer term work that I call the trusted leadership advisor was a differentiator. And he challenged me. He said, I want you to take responsibility for perpetuating this role. And so being with you tonight is really part of my pledge to him that I would do that. Next slide. So this is a slide, I call this the why. And this executive, who was an R&D leader, had a very sort of metaphorical way to talk about it. I just want to give you a minute to look at what he said. So it takes a while. Those of us who've been working with senior people for any amount of time know that initially you do a body of work, there's probably a specific objective. But after that, there is an intensity and an opportunity to do what this gentleman is talking about. And so I just wanted to share that more metaphorical comment with you. Now let me go to a definition. And for those of you who've read what I've written in Consulting Psychology Journal, I think the first time I wrote about it was 10 years ago in 2015, and I have a number of times since. But here's the definition, and I'm highlighting 5 specific points about it. So obviously, trust is key. You have completed a body of work, and the client invites you to continue, and to continue with him or her for the duration of the role that you're in, or even beyond that, because they want to ensure that they've they can leverage the lessons that were learned and the insights that were gained. And this particular resource is always company paid. So let me go to the next slide about what the TLA relationship is not. Because some people have said, well, Karol, this is just a semantic shift. It's just different language for an executive coach. You can think about it that way, but really, fundamentally, when you move into TLA mode, you're moving from coaching to a more consultative relationship. And that is significantly different. And it also is not about fostering dependency. I've been criticized for that, and I adamantly reject that criticism because it really is about that deeper, enduring trust, that mutual respect, that committed presence, and that important differentiator that you bring in this work. And you do become part of the executive's inner circle, specifically related to talent management issues, in my experience anyway. I'm not a strategy expert. I'm not going to advise about manufacturing or any of those really significant business operation issues, but I am going to advise and provide consultative guidance when it comes to talent management. Next slide. So oftentimes people have said to me, Karol, why do people who are so advanced, C-level leaders, really want to work with a coach, start off as a coach? And I always say, well, first of all, why does every professional athlete have a coach? There's an intention to become as effective as one can be. And then my other answer is these people do not need to get any smarter, but there is always something to be learned, and it's usually in the behavioral dimension. And that's what you see here when I'm trying to articulate the states of presence in a TLA engagement. So sometimes your client will come in and they're in crucible state of presence. There's something very intense and demanding going on in terms of the business. Or they might be in a sanctuary state of presence. And what they need is some reinforcement of their capabilities, because that's one thing, and I think we all know this, those of us who've been working with senior people, they don't get a lot of affirmation. And so there is the opportunity to provide that. And then if you're with them for long term, as I've been, 8, 9, 10, 15 years, they're approaching that final quarter of their career state. And there is a lot to talk about in terms of getting them prepared psychologically for that post-career life phase. And that is really existentially, really very powerful work to be done. Okay, next slide. I told you I wanted to give you a few tools. So this conceptualization of the dimensions, the role dimensions of the TLA role is one of those tools. I call it Echo, Anchor, Mirror, Spark. And in Echo, you're warning, you know enough about your client that you can recognize when there's been a misstep. And by the way, in my model, I am always in a very collaborative relationship with my client's HR person and with his or her boss. So I will be privy to some things that may be going on in the organization that I know warrants some kind of a warning. So that's Echo. Anchor, again, reminding them of progress that they've made. Mirror, we all do this, I'm sure, because we want our clients to see themselves as accurately as they need to, especially if there's some timely actions that need to be taken. And there will be times when we can be a catalyst, spark, and help ignite some new thoughts or some bolder actions about things that they could do that will enable them to be even more effective than they already are and or accelerate the organization's success. Next slide, Mark, please. This is probably one of the most powerful tools I have ever used in these 30 years of work, and I call it the visual leadership metaphor. And for those of you who read Consulting Psychology Journal, I did publish an article on this topic. It was called The Art of Coaching at the Top, using the client's imagery for development. And it was in CPJ volume 74 in 2002, a few years ago. And so what I do at the outset of an engagement is I put 3 boxes, empty boxes, on a sheet of paper, and I ask my client to describe him or herself, frame 1, how they see themselves currently as a leader, how they want to see themselves, assuming we've made some progress in our work, and then what's the goal? Where do they want to get to ultimately? And you can see the beautiful imagery of this client who wanted to move from someone who was really just much more involved than he needed to be, especially in day-to-day, and then striving for some balance, and then ultimately getting to a place where he could orchestrate the action. And often what happens with this particular tool is, remember, I'm working with folks for a long time, they will get into frame 3. So we have a visual pathway describing, mapping what we're trying to do and where we're wanting to get to. And it's time for a new VLM. And frame 3 becomes frame 1 in a new VLM. And then they identify a second and then a third as the next goal. Really such a powerful tool. I mean, especially if your client happens to be visual. But you know what? I've had clients who are not very visual, and I explain the whole concept to them, and they'll give me a sports metaphor. They'll say, well, for frame 1, I'm a good player on the field, and then they might move into frame 2 and say, player coach, and then they might in frame 3 be, owner. So they don't have to be especially visual, but when they are, it is really an especially powerful technique, even more powerful. So let me talk about another tool. Next slide, Mark. Partnerships with the boss and HR professionals. And you can see the citation at the bottom of this slide. So I did publish a chapter in the McGraw-Hill Talent Management Handbook. Goes back a number, in 2017, right? Now, a lot of senior consultants and coaches I know do not do this, have questions about it. They worry about confidentiality. I don't know, maybe it was my psychoanalytic training, clinical training that helps me in terms of maintaining proper boundaries of confidentiality. But, as effective as you might be in the work that you're doing, your eyes and ears are not inside. You don't really see your client and how he or she is operating. And so to have this partnership with the HR person, and by the way, when you have this partnership with the HR person and you manage it in a way where there is secondary gain for them, there is something that they learn that is helpful in how they're interacting with this very senior person. It's almost a guarantee that you are going to get more and more candor over time from that HR partner, and you're probably going to get more business in the organization, by the way. So that timely flow of observation about the client really enriches the quality of what you're doing. And it really, I already made that point about influencing your credibility and the likelihood that you'll have further engagements in the organization. Oftentimes I get the question, if I'm working with a CEO, you mean the chairman of the board? You're having an ongoing partnership with the chairman of the board? And the answer is yes. And my client, the CEO, establishes that pathway, opens that pathway, and I have a conversation with the board chair, and I just know how to be very careful in the ways that I manage the content that happens in those conversations. And by the way, speaking of the conversations, I will touch base with the HR person and the boss before every meeting with a simple email saying, what should I know? And I usually get an email back or I get a phone call, but it's that kind of frequency of shared information that really enriches the quality of the engagement. And I think I have one more tool I want to share with you. No, I thought I had something in here about written summaries, but I'm going to tell you about that tool. So the other thing that I do is after every meeting, I write a summary. These people are busy. They're traveling all over the world. You may think you've had the most brilliant insight or conversation in a meeting. You can't count on the fact that they will really connect the dots. And so I do write a written summary after every meeting and send that to them. And it's another way for me to convey what is probably the most overarching message of all, which is, I see you. I am trying to see you. I am trying to be with you in every way possible. And so I'm putting the Howard Payne quote up here again, because it really is an exhortation for us. I mean, we need to be thinking about what's happening to executive coaching. Now, I don't think everyone wants to be a TLA. And I'm not saying everyone should be, but we do need to be thinking about how are we differentiating our work. Whatever your model is, I'm telling you about my model. And I'm certain what a differentiator it is because I've gotten comments like this from Howard and others. Next slide. So in terms of how to do the work, I don't know how many of you have seen this book of mine. It was published several years ago. It is still to this day, I think, Mark, I don't know if you have a comment to make here, but as far as I know, it is the only collection of C-level coaching TLA cases that exist. But the power of it, in my opinion, is every client wrote an executive reflection on what the experience was like, what doing the work was like. And we did it double blind. I didn't see any of the reflections before I wrote the case. And they didn't see the case before they wrote their reflection. And so if you really want to take a deeper dive into this work, I don't want to sound too self-promoting, but this book will take you there. I think there might be one more slide, Mike, Mark.
Yeah, I'll just jump in for one brief second on that is comparing. There are plenty books on C-level leadership and top
Yeah.
level, and even on coaching with them. But many of those books dive into succession planning,
Yeah.
assessment, why CEOs fail, all good topics, but it's
Yes.
not about the uniqueness of this one.
Yeah, thank you. So some final thoughts here and questions. I think that first comment is very important. And, just a reminder, I mean, this model evolved not just out of my head, it evolved because the clients asked for it. They wanted to continue. They discovered, for those of us who are psychologists, but for those of us who have studied anything in the behavioral sciences, they have discovered through the course of the work what a powerful tool understanding human behavior is for them. And they've dialed it in to the armamentarium that they have, along with HR, along with IT, marketing, finance. And they want it. They want to continue to have it as a tool that will enable them to continue to progress in whatever way they need to be as effective as leaders and to drive the organizational success. And then, of course, some challenging questions for us. How can we scale this kind of work? I mean, this is my legacy project now. I told Mark a few months ago, I'm in my requirement stage now. I'm not taking any new engagements. I'm wrapping up a half a dozen assignments. I'm mentoring some people who are doing this work. I probably will write some more, but I mean, I hope if you are at all interested, if you are at all thinking about the potential power of this work and how it could differentiate us from others who are out there hanging the coaching shingle, that you will think about. And I'm willing to have more conversation with you about how we can scale TLA practice. And then, of course, how do we need to change? I mean, there is so much going on in the marketplace now in terms of technology and other marketplace forces. We need to stay open so that we are as responsive to our clients as we need to be. So I'm going to stop there. Almost on time, Mark, right?
Awesome. So a quick question for you before we even go into breakout groups,
Yeah.
because we don't control the group. There are some of us on this call who are quite seasoned, some of us who might be at mid-career, who are
Yeah.
journeying along, who may not work at the C-suite level yet.
Right.
Take just a moment because it'll feed into our breakouts. Let's say my work is with directors. My work
Right.
is not at that level. Just how do I start to incorporate this notion of being a trusted leadership advisor if I'm not yet working at the apex
Yeah.
of the organization?
I mean,
And that may be useful depending on the mix of how we end up in
Yeah.
breakout groups.
I mean, I think it gets to the nature of your relationship with whoever it is in the organization who's the decision maker. So when I first started, working 30 years ago, I wasn't working with the CEO, right? But I made it my business to go to organizations where I met HR people, senior HR people. I made it my business to form relationships with them. And I made certain that they understood what I was doing and that they were an important partner in what I was doing. And what happened was the engagements began to move up the organization. So that is one really critical point that I would have to make. And then after that, when you start working with C-suite leaders, they talk to each other. And my referrals were CEO to CEO. I mean, in different organizations. But if you're starting out, that HR professional and forming that relationship is really, really an imperative thing to be doing.
We're going to go into breakouts in a little bit because we have so many people on the call. Just before we do you have any particular prompts or suggestions for the call? People tend to gravitate and they'll talk about what they want, but do you have anything in particular you'd encourage the breakout groups to discuss? And I know you'll be in one and I'll be in one, but do you have anything in particular you would recommend? Or is it just react to this and think about it?
I guess one thing I would suggest is, given what's going on in the workplace now, I mean, it's a complicated landscape. Remote working, and employers are really, some are very adamant about wanting their employees in every day. Some are okay with their flex plans. I mean, the nature of work. And then how can we, given what we understand about organizational dynamics and human behavior, how can we be helpful in terms of what they're grappling with? There's a level of anxiety and depression and concern that is magnified incredibly given where we are in 21st century business dynamics right now. So I would offer that.